Hello, my name's Robin Koroluk. Thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to speak about Careers for All, part of the CFA Society of Saskatchewan speaker series. Today on this series we're going to touch upon what the CFA stands for. The CFAs are more than just a financial analyst. CFAs are more than finance majors. And CFAs are more than just an analytical personality. We're going to jump into most of this in a little more detail just to give you a better idea of really what the CFA is and how we see it playing out in real life examples. So Jordan, why don't you get us started?
Thank you, Robin. The first thing I'll say is that chartered financial analysts are not very good marketers. It's a very poor designation name, financial analyst. Now, a financial analyst, if we look at sort of the black and white definition, is someone who examines, collects, interprets financial data. And that helps companies make their business decisions. So am I going to invest in Tesla versus Amazon? Am I going to develop a new product? Am I going to merge with another business? So an analyst in this context is analyzing the data to make their decisions. And it sounds kind of boring. At least I think so. It wouldn't excite me if I was sitting in your classroom listening to this. But the first point I'd make is financial analyst is actually a little bit more than number crunching. Half of financial analyst is analyzing data, yes, but the other half is the qualitative side, the analytical side. So if I'm analyzing an oil and gas company for an investment, I can crunch the numbers, but I need to consider, that well they just drilled, it's producing at X, and I can calculate cash flow and all those goodies. But how far is that well from a pipeline? Do they have to truck it out? What kind of quality oil are we looking at? Is it light, sweet crude that I can basically pour into my car? Or do I have to refine it? And the more refining, the more cost, the less profit. What's the payback period on wells in the area? There's so many different considerations in any industry that having a knowledge of that industry is important. And if you're in Saskatchewan and you want to work here, oil and gas, natural resources, agriculture, even we're getting more into biotech and things like that. So having that industry side, that business skill sets is important, even in the context of financial analysis. If we turn to the next, the one thing I want to say is that CFAs are actually much more than financial analysts. And that's where the marketing job is done poorly. And I want to turn it over to Robin, who will discuss on this slide just sort of some of the diversity in the positions that CFAs hold.
I love the excitement around how we're not just financial analysts. It's very true. When you see the name and don't really understand, that's what I would think of too. And then lots of people don't explore it even more. They just assume it's not for them. So today is really just all about educating you and letting you understand the full depth of what the CFA really is. So diversity, from a geographic perspective, the CFA, you can be a CFA anywhere, different industries. Function, 178,000 active CFA members in 162 markets. One thing we like to mention is this: if you're a CFA, you're a CFA in Saskatchewan, as you are in Asia, as you are in South America. Everyone has gone through the same course, the same exams, the same everything to get to the same spot. There's 25,000 firms that employ CFAs. That's a lot. Some have one, some have many. Top positions with a CFA designation can include a portfolio manager, an analyst. You got your C-suites, your executives, a consultant, risk manager, investment banking, mergers and acquisitions, just to name a few. Some of the top employers include JP Morgan, 𝐅𝐢𝐧𝐚𝐽, HSBC, Bank of America, Merrill, UBS, where Jordan used to work, E&Y, RBC, Citigroup, Morgan Stanley, and Wells Fargo. One thing I did want to get Jordan's perspective on is being a stereotypical CFA or Chartered Financial Analyst in Saskatchewan seems to be tougher, just based on us not being a financial district or a financial province. Although there of course is. Where do you see one ending up if they do the CFA?
Well, I think I've got a couple of points just to add on to what you were saying is that yes, pure financial analysts are not in high demand in Saskatchewan because it's not a huge finance center. Toronto would be the big one, and then maybe Calgary, Vancouver, sort of interchangeable, or going to Wall Street or these places. So if you want to do a pure investment banking type position, then you may have to look farther afoot. Now, within Saskatchewan, if we look at Saskatchewan top employers, we do see some pure financial analyst type positions. TD Greystone would be an example of equity analysis, real estate, these sort of things. Addenda Capital, PFM Capital. PFM does private equity, and they're a sponsor of the CFA Society, which we appreciate. Lex Capital. In Saskatoon, Westcap does equity analysis. So there is some. But if you want to stay here, you're looking more maybe farm credit, the government, Sask Power. Even Federated Co-op is a big supplier or employer of CFAs. So there are jobs there, and part of our function on the board is to expand that scope of jobs to the co-ops of the world, to the C-suite positions, which is chief executive officer, chief financial officer, chief investment officer, these type positions.
Right, and I even know in my current role, there was never really CFAs in the wealth management industry. That's changing, and although that's not a requirement, it's now a new thing in a way that just is presenting the ethical nature of the people involved in the wealth management business.
Ethical nature, yes, definitely. But when we get into the discussion on kind of the hiring advice section, what we'll see is that the workload required and the perseverance and the time management skills, things that are important in any job, whether you're working at Mr. Lube doing oil changes or you're working at Bank of Nova Scotia. So the skills that you learn as a CFA are so valuable just in any work environment.
That's right.
And as people see that more and more, it opens up wider and wider opportunities.
Right.
So the next area that we want to touch on is that CFAs are more than just financial analysts. They're also much, much more than finance majors. You don't have to go to university and major in finance to become a CFA down the road. We come from diverse backgrounds, and there's many positions that are complementary skills. We've talked about my chartered accounting CPA background, great synergy between the two professions. Coming out with an audit background or a tax background, great advantage when I went into finance. Some of our board are economists. One is a master's of economics, worked in Alberta with the Treasury Board before moving here, and now he's a wealth manager. We have financial planners. In one of the previous episodes, I talked about we have a PhD in applied mathematics. We have a master's in cybersecurities. One of our past board members and past presidents, in fact, actually has a fine arts background. So people come from all walks of life, and it led them to the CFA board in Saskatchewan. And I think the other area is law. If you're interested in becoming a lawyer, a CFA can open the door there, whether that be mergers and acquisitions work, in-house counsel, working for the government or regulators. 2 weeks ago, I just presented 2 investment series to regulators on the prairies. So again, there's that synergy, similar. You're presenting to lawyers because they need to know this stuff in their work. Estate planners. If I turn over to Robin, I think that in her organization, in her practice, she just brought on an estate planner to do wealth management.
Yeah, you're right, Jordan. We were looking to expand our team, and of course it's important to have a variety of different backgrounds. So the individual we brought on has been a practicing tax lawyer for several years, and really brings with him the knowledge of tax planning. He's done his in-depth tax course. He has a CPA, and really just can provide that additional layer of knowledge that we don't necessarily have ourselves. So although he didn't maybe assume he was going to end up in wealth management, this is where he is.
And I noticed she never offered me the position. So.
We're still hiring.
I will take my wealth management essentials course for you.
So, as we've been talking about, CFAs are more than just an analytical personality. So in our previous series, if you listened to, we talked about some of the soft skills. Really, this is just to mention that there is other personalities that can get along in the finance industry, whether you're an introvert, extrovert. Your introverts, maybe you're going to end up in a role more like an analyst, product development, risk, and treasury. Whereas an extrovert, you might want to be in a client-facing role, fiduciary, financial planning, and sales. Somewhere in between, you can end up in legal, M&A, regulatory, and wealth management. So you may not end up in those really deep analyst positions. And I do know you've been involved in some M&A work in your time. I would love to hear a little more about that.
I'll include that with the job pressure. And I mean, in most businesses these days, there's really not a 9-to-5 job. That's just sort of more of a stereotype.
Yeah.
But in a 9-to-5 job, you come in at 9, you punch out at 5, you enjoy life. Other jobs, it's almost a 7-by-24 position. I've worked with people and myself where you've been up at 3 in the morning because I've been in Miami, for example, and I have a management meeting at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in Zurich, Switzerland. So that's part of the job. If you don't want to do it, someone else will. So that's sort of pressure a bit on you. I've flown into and out of, say, Singapore from Switzerland, which are like 14, 15-hour flights. I go to the hotel or I go to my house, I shower, and within an hour I'm in my desk working. That's job pressure. As far as the M&A goes, yes, lots of pressure there, but there's a lot of doing nothing, and then there's huge pressure. And there's pressure in the fact that you're basically deciding, making a recommendation, should our company buy this other company? And these aren't like $10,000 Toyota Camrys. These are multi-million dollar deals. And if your analysis is wrong, you're going to pay the price as a company for the few years coming. Also, job pressure. I was doing acquisition due diligence in London, England during the terrorist attack. And we ended up actually walking to and from the law firm where we're doing our due diligence at because all the roads were shut down and everything was shut down. And no one knew we were there in London, England, because that's part of due diligence on a merger, is that no one can know that you're checking out this company. So none of our loved ones had any idea we were actually in the city that was being bombed. And that causes a lot of consternation for those with families in various jurisdictions. So yeah, depending on the job, there can be a lot of pressure. Or in my case, traveling around the world, that wears you down physically and mentally after a while, between the time zones and just the different, one day you're in the Swiss Alps, the next day you're in, hot, humid Hong Kong or hot, humid Cayman Islands. So again, lots of pressure there.
But I think it really highlights that in a finance job, you can have, your 9 to 5 or your very elaborate and exotic jobs that you can travel.
Yeah, or you can do some of them. Now we both do wealth management,
right,
which is kind of in that in-between
yes, area
as far as introverts and extroverts go.
Yes.
And also maybe job pressure. It's not, no one's calling me at 3 a.m. or
right,
or that sort of thing. So
right.
What about the personal risk side? The salary versus, in your area of work, it sounds kind of mercenary, but you do eat what you hunt.
That's right. Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah. So again, your 9 to 5, you can check in, check out, and have your salary that you get paid for your performance and maybe a little bonus. And that's really, I suppose, on the admin side, when I first started in the industry, that's really how my salary structure worked. Whereas as I evolved into an advisor role, I eat what I hunt. Essentially, I get paid commission based on the clients I bring in, based on certain products that are sold, and essentially based on the value that I'm adding for the client. Because if I'm adding value for my client and I am bringing in more money, I am getting paid more. So it does motivate you, but it also makes you do the right thing.
Okay. And just sort of to flush out what Robin said, is in the middle gap, we had listed private equity.
Right.
And it differs, but private equity is, if I'm working for PFM Capital, for example, maybe I have the opportunity to buy in on a deal that I'm working on. So maybe I'm getting paid salary, or maybe I'm getting paid, as Robin said, percent assets under management. But maybe there's deals coming down the pike that I am able to put some of my own capital at risk. So that's kind of that middle ground where maybe there's some salary involved, but I can, I've got 10 grand of my own, let me invest in this project. Now again, you got to watch out, because you don't want to be getting into conflicts with clients. We're talking something slightly different here, with actual deals that you're buying into. You're not trying to beat your clients out of investment opportunities. But that's kind of that middle ground. So I think just basically, like, what we tried to convey in this episode is that financial analyst is little bit misleading as far as what CFAs do. We're everywhere. We're around the world. We're in every industry. We're in every profession. You can become a CFA with a fine arts major, an economist, an accountant, an applied math degree. You don't have to go the finance route. And you don't have to be that introverted person in the stereotypical back office who's just crunching numbers, the introvert. If you want that, that's there. But you can also go out and meet clients like Robin and I do. You can sell product if you like to sell things. There's so much that you can do as far as job opportunities, depending on your personality and what you like to do. So don't just sort of say, financial analyst, that sounds so darn dull. Look at it a little bit deeper, and there might be something that appeals exactly to what you want.
We highly encourage you too to reach out to someone in the industry, including ourselves as a mentor, just someone to ask questions, because sometimes you don't know everything you should know. But with that being said, we'll wrap up today. We just want to thank our corporate sponsors. Things like this do require a lot of time and resources, and we wouldn't be able to do it without you. So thank you.